Hey y'all, how you doing? This is D and I'm coming to you live from the beautiful, majestic, and beyond word. Beyond word, what the hell does that mean? Trying to think of, as I'm talking, I'm thinking of 3 words to put in a row that describe something so beautiful. And then, play opposite of it, a juxtaposition, because I'm actually in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn Express in Hays, Kansas. But I wanted to make this dramatic. I wanted to make the opening big and majestic. But it's not. This is a podcast I've been wanting to start for almost 3 years now. I've been planning this for a long, long time. And I've been wanting to get it just right. Really wanted this to be just right. I wanted it to launch perfectly. First episode was going to be the thing that really solidified everything and put it all out there. And everybody knew what it was about, and it could launch, and it could be awesome, and all that kind of stuff. But instead I start like this. Oh, I've had grand ideas, but rarely do they really come to fruition. But that's life. And you know what? This is exactly how I should start this podcast. It's me. It's raw. This is life. This is the shit that we're in. And this is what this podcast is about. For those who don't know, my name is D.E. Foster, and I am host of the Benzo Free podcast. I've hosted that podcast for 4 years now. And hopefully going to try to keep that one going too. But this is my new podcast. This is me. This is the podcast I've been wanting to do. I get to do what I want to do here. I get to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to hear your ideas because I love them, and that's going to feed this. But I have been collecting topics and ideas and things to discuss for 3 years now, and I have hundreds. And I can't wait to start to share those with you. So I decided, to kick this off that I keep putting off, and I've been putting off this kickoff, and I've been putting off starting this podcast for a long, 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 long time. And I decided, hey, I'm doing a road trip. And maybe that's the best place to start it, because road trips were kind of a centerpiece of my other podcast, and maybe this is the place to go. But, I wanted to get it right, and I wanted to have a nice trail. I wanted to get here and maybe, have a nice wooded trail and all be peaceful, because this is about life and about anxiety and about our stresses and about the crap we live with. But life isn't perfect. Life is far from that. So I am walking in circles around the parking lot of a motel in the middle of freaking Kansas. Actually, in the middle, pretty close to the middle. In fact, this is halfway point between Denver and Kansas City, which is where I'm headed. Anybody who's listened to my other podcast knows that I made this trip many times. On this trip, I'm actually heading out to, I'm leaving Colorado, going through Kansas, Missouri, on into Illinois, Kentucky, winding up in Tennessee in a couple of nights, and then doing some hiking with a friend of mine down in southern Tennessee for a few days. Sorry about that. Had a little hiccup there as I was talking. And then we're going on into Florida for a while. And then I'm coming back solo through the southern states. So I'll be coming back through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, on to probably Texas, Oklahoma, and kind of work my way back up to Colorado. That's the plan. I am a road trip guy, and this is what I do. And this is my new podcast. What is this podcast about? You are asking. I know that's your question, so I'm going to talk to you right now. This podcast, as I mentioned before, is about life. Or maybe I didn't mention it before, but I'm mentioning it now. This podcast is about life and the shit that we go through in life, the anxiety that we go through in life, the difficulties, the relationships, the hardships, the pain, the joy, the laughter. Yes, I sound like some Hallmark commercial or something, I don't know. But it's one that I've been passionate about and wanting to do for a long time. And I'm going to address things here that I couldn't address on the other podcast. For those who don't know, I hosted a podcast on anti-anxiety medication, people coming off of that, and also helping to raise awareness about the complications of anti-anxiety medications, primarily benzodiazepines. The podcast is called Benzo Free. It's still going. Once I get back from this trip, I will pick it up again. It's a monthly podcast I'm running right now that's, I think, helping out some people. And I've really enjoyed doing that over the years, but it's limiting for me because I don't get to be my total self. And I really wanted to do this podcast on the side because this is where I can be me. And this is going to be more raw. It's going to be more live. It's going to be more just who I am, not as prepared, and talk about the crap we're going through in life, to talk about the difficulties we have, especially those of us who are anxious and deal with anxiety. So my cornerstones for this is going to be life, anxiety, and surviving. That's it. I mean, I don't know. Probably can think of 3 better words than that. But again, this is just me giving it to you straight because I didn't even I got the sheets of papers of topics I want to talk about. I've come up with hundreds of names for this podcast. I've come up with 600, 700, 800 lines of topics and things to talk about. But I kept waiting to start it because I needed it to be perfect. I needed to come up with just the right name. I needed to get that set up. I needed to do all these things. And it never happened. When I started the other podcast, Benzo Free, one of the pieces of advice they said is just start. Other people who had done podcasts had said in some YouTube videos I'd watched, just start doing it. I'd forgotten that lesson. So here I am, just starting the new podcast. This is not a pretty beginning. It is raw, it is unpracticed, and it may even be mostly crap, and I'm okay with that. It's going to get better. I'm going to get better at this. I learned, doing a podcast for 4 years, I've learned a lot, but I still got a lot to learn. And that's one of the cornerstones of this podcast that I want to let you know is, I don't know shit. I don't think any of us really know anything. But that's a whole philosophical subject for a debate at a different time. But I've learned some things that I think are true, and I'm curious as hell, and I read like crazy, and I'm been all over the place doing stuff, and I just want to pick up things and keep moving forward. So I want to share that. I want to discuss these things. I may get one person listening to this podcast. One. And I'm okay with that. Honestly, I've said this before, and the other one, it's like if I have one person listening that said they enjoy it, I'm fine. And you know what? You said that threshold at that level, it's going to be hard to fail. That's going to be hard to fail because that's the level I'm going to start at. So for you out there, the one listener for this podcast, thanks for joining me today. I got some other principles that I think, I don't know, principle sounds too formal. Some other, not values, not principles, I don't know the right word, but the cornerstones, the cornerstones of what we're going to be dealing with, and also just, I can't think of the better word, but what we're about here at this podcast. And in the next few days on this trip, I'm going to share those with you. But I'm just going to record these in one thing a day, maybe even more than one recording a day if I get all worked up, but hopefully just one a day. I don't know, and I love that. And that I thought was going to be one of the names of my podcast at one point is I don't know. I am not going to come to you and say I have the answers because I don't. Life is messed up. It is amazing, it is wonderful, it is beautiful, and it is also a cesspool, and it is pure shit. And that's the other thing too. If you noticed, I've sworn already several times on this podcast. I'm allowed to do that on this one. I didn't do that on the other one. The other podcast was more formal, although it was still me and raw and a lot of stuff I did, but it was limited. This one is not about benzos. We're not talking about benzodiazepines. We're not talking about anti-anxiety drugs. We may touch on them, but that's not what this one's about. This one's about life. It's about anxiety. And it's about trying to live a better life. to be happier, to be more fulfilled, to find more meaning in life. For those of us that are still struggling, this is the podcast for the other half. The other half, people who struggle secretly, day in, day out, sometimes just to get out of bed, sometimes just to go to the store. I still struggle with that stuff. I am not cured, I am not fixed, and I'm not coming to you at all as any kind of expert whatsoever. I'm a guy still in the thick of it. And I wonder if maybe that might resonate. Oh, I'm going to sit on a curb here for a second and close this out. But I don't know what tomorrow's podcast will bring. I will find some structure as we do this. And we'll take it one day at a time. I'm going to decide what I'm covering here, because that's how I can be passionate about it. And it will be topics of all kinds, but anything about living this human life, especially things that revolve around anxiety and stress, which is the things that so many of those who were on the Benzo Free podcast were dealing with. And that's one of the things is that podcast, I was working in the benzo community for 4 or 5 years and still am. I'm still on several research teams and some organizations and lead different groups and teach different training courses. And yes, that's the traffic going nearby. Got some semis going by the highway. And I'm still involved in that. I want to keep supporting that group because they need it so bad. But for me to keep going, for me to keep doing what I do, I need to have an outlet where I can truly be me and I can live my passion and I can talk about what I think is important. And that's what this one is. So this is going to be more anxiety focused, but mostly even just more life focused. Just how do we live a better life? Nothing, huge. And see, again, can't think of the words because my brain totally is fried and doesn't always respond. I got a lot of limitations. I got a lot of physical limitations. I got a lot of psychological limitations that came out of benzodiazepine use. I was on them for 12 years. Came off the drugs, and I still have all these symptoms that have lingered with me. And now I've been benzo-free for 9 years. But I still have neurological damage. That's my life. That's the reality of it. I've come to acceptance of that. So now I want to talk about something else. Still going to do the Benzo Free podcast. I'll work on that with that audience. But this is something different. So if you want to come back and check it out, please do so. Day 2 will be coming out tomorrow. I'm going to drive the rest of the way tomorrow into Kansas City, where I'm going to be meeting up with my sister and nephew and his fiance to have some dinner and wish them a Merry Christmas. And then I'm picking up a friend of mine, and we're hitting the road heading out to Tennessee. And I'm going to be talking to you along the way. And I'm just going to do it, unedited. My goal is to do this completely unedited. I'm going to release it as it is. Sometimes I'll swear on here, as I did a few times, but if you know me at all, you realize it's just not me. I don't do it that often, but I can if I want to, and people on this podcast can if they want to. You can be yourself. I'm not going to shy away from topics. I'm not going to shy away from controversies, but I am going to approach them with respect, hopefully, and with kindness for sure. Actually, I'm hoping I can do both. I'm saying hoping only because I will fail at it sometimes, but it is my goal to approach all our topics with respect and kindness for everybody. That's just how I am. That's who I am, and this is just going to be who I am. Maybe I'll get 1 listener. Maybe I'll get 20. Hell, maybe I'll get 100 one day. I don't know. It's just something I have to do. So I hope you check back in. I hope you climb on board and subscribe to this, whatever you want to do, and be part of it. And write in some comments. I'll check them out, and I'll read them, and I'll, if you like what's happening, it'll help me steer the direction we're going. But it's something I gotta do. Yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Dee. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out our podcast. I do need to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only and should never be considered medical, psychological, or professional health advice of any kind. If you or someone you know is dealing with significant mental health issues, please seek professional help. Resources can be found in our show notes and on our website at unevenpodcast.com. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the flip side.